The long-running battle over retention or removal of oil subsidy between the government and key stakeholders in the political economy may have finally been resolved with yesterday's decision of President Buhari to jettison the much-criticized payment regime. The pump price of petrol has now been slashed from 120 to 125 naira from 145 naira. Again, ministries, departments, agencies, and parastatals have been directed by governments to cut down their budgets to 20%. We shall now look at all of these with Dr. Okey Ikechukwu, Leadership Consultant and Executive Director of Development Specs Academy, Abuja. Welcome to the program, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Okey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I mean,
good morning, Ruben. How are you?
You've been a philosopher. You saw ahead. You decided to self-isolate even before self-isolation became a fad. It is good to see you out here joining us on the morning show. We've been talking about coronavirus.
I'm here, fortunately, in an isolated studio. Yeah, I listened to your earlier conversation, and Ruben, I must say, I hold something against you and the beautiful ladies, your colleagues. You seem to, you were sounding very excited that our leaders can no longer travel out for medical tourism. Is that a bit of bad belly on the part of the team?
Not at all,
but it's not at all, but it's a lot of excitement.
No, it's a needed incentive to develop our healthcare systems here.
It's just a reminder that lessons can be learned.
I understand that perfectly, because you see, no, I'm only being deliberately mischievous. You see, I like the point because it's our elite are being compelled. They are being compelled for once to act responsibly. Their vulnerability will compel them to do what needs to be done about medical services and healthcare in Nigeria. They need to understand that they are not elected to attend picnics all over the world at public expense. So, in my view, I share your submission on the matter that. This is Providence actually compelling us to act responsibly as public office holders.
Yeah, but generally, what's your assessment of what has been done by the Nigerian authorities? First, at the level of prevention, and then the reality that confronted us, and now steps that have been taken between Monday and today in terms of containment by the states and also by the federal government.
No, I think that in fairness to the authorities, I was personally surprised at the speed and ease with which some of the non-contact temperature measuring devices surfaced at airports and some public places, where I think there's a challenge. Also in terms of awareness, very good effort was made. The speed with which also the Italian that was mentioned in Lagos was picked up and all of that, and the updates, they are good. Where I think there's a challenge is the lack of facility for isolation. We were ambushed by all of this. And so in all the cases where you've seen of isolation, whether in Enugu or in Lagos, you've had a complaint about the terrible conditions under which the people were kept. I think that's something to be addressed. And also the initial announcement, I think that 300 and nearly 400 million was brought out for it. I don't know under what headings. The concern on my part is for it not to be another spending and money sharing opportunity for the elite. But so far, quite frankly, I think the government has not done too badly, all things considered.
Well, that's a charitable view, and thank you for that. Having said that, according to the WHO, airport screening is more for public morale so that the authorities can be seen to do something, because it's actually not effective with regards to containing the spread of a virus, seeing as a lot of people, when they arrive, are asymptomatic and develop symptoms later. So what the government really needed to have done, I feel, was to shut down the borders, as they were able to do with other considerations. They shut down the land borders in spite of a lot of criticism. That kind of singular action should have been undertaken this time, I feel. But I'd like to talk to you about the economic impact of coronavirus. All over the world, we're seeing the global shocks. There's now a threat of a global recession. What is your response to the way the federal government has tackled that aspect?
Well, I will only, so far what we see in the public domain is the effect on petroleum price, effect on budget and the reactions to it. We need to look under that. There are many Nigerians who export various kinds of metal, zinc, copper, lead. Now, in the last 3 weeks, the price has crashed. Let's suppose you have a ton of X metal that you're supposed to export for $4 million per ton, it turns out that you're now exporting it for 1.2 million or 1.6 or 1.9. What it means is that all projections you've made, whether for business expansion, salaries, maintenance, they've all been shattered. The impact of that is all over the place without it being on the government radar. So it's not for us to focus only on government, but on the fact that our economy is driven mostly by the informal sector. A lot of our boys and men import a lot of things from China. A lot of manufacturing goes on. Now, trade with China has declined dramatically. What that means is that several businesses are in limbo. What that means is that disposable income has shrunk very seriously. What it also means is that those who earn their living from transporting such goods, etc. So it's an all-round thing. And that's where really there's very little the government can do for anybody. It's a global clampdown. The US is suffering the same thing. Every other country. I'm sure some of us have seen the video of people fighting over tissue paper in supermarkets in the US. And police had to be called in. Just tissue paper. So there's a global panic. There's a collapse of all the known values. And this is even as it's going on. I'm sure we're all aware that insurance has collapsed because you don't expect that at the end of this coronavirus episode, you will expect insurance companies to meet the obligations as stated in the papers. They will all disappear. So it's a total recalibration of our humanity, a recalibration of the rules of engagement, and it will compel a revaluation. Who would have believed that Nigeria will impose a travel ban on the US? They will say a whole US. But you see, our humanity is being put on the table. So all things considered, the federal government, of course, we'll get on to the economic intervention steps it has tried to make. But it's just another government among others. And unfortunately, a government not too strong on governance issues and proper rule keeping. And now this has come on. And what I see may be a compelling external force majeure, that will force the government to focus less on consumption and begin to pay attention to things that enable nations grow their economies.
Thank you for that perspective. And speaking of government still, I'd like to bring in here the CBN Intervention Fund of 1.1 trillion naira. Now, the breakdown from this means that about 1 trillion naira is going to go into supporting the manufacturing sector, boosting local production, and about 100 billion naira is going to go towards supporting the healthcare sector, looking for test kits and vaccines to support this outbreak in Nigeria. What is your analysis of this ratio and divide in the way the intervention fund is going to be spent? And do you think that this 1 trillion naira that's going to be put towards the manufacturing sector is going to also have an impact on our smaller local manufacturers and not just our big local manufacturers in the country?
Well, I think we take that by examining, first of all, how banking institutions in Nigeria have been relating to manufacturers over the last 20, 30 years. The small and medium scale produce all over the place, the cottage industries, the people who actually produce most of the things that you say are manufactured in Nigeria and which are used locally, they actually do not have access to funding from the financial institutions because the strictures are too high for most of them. And the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, which is an association of big boys in manufacturing, who have easy access to Forex and so many other things, if we are to sit down and honestly do a disaggregation of their contribution vis-a-vis those who are not captured as manufacturers in the national manufacturing demographic map, it's scandalous. So whereas on the face of it, the matter of we have a heading under manufacturing where money is going to be spent, whether it will trickle down is a different matter. Look at the situation in Algeria. All cottage industries are recorded. Most of the employers of labor, the government has the names of their staff. And so you find that interventions go directly. The question now is, no. First of all, let's say that the step at all even to consider an intervention fund, which is what a lot of other countries, including the US, are doing, is good. That's good thinking from CBN. The expenditure headings, too, are good. Whether that expenditure heading will actually translate into a drill down that will get into the hands of those who do actual manufacturing, whose output impacts the economy and the local economies and the life of Nigerians is another matter. So take a list of the things that are manufactured in Nigeria and who will prioritize them. What will be the conditions for access to this fund? How many of the small manufacturers all over the place can access them? what will I give as collateral? So these are the conditions we should look at rather than the amount and the intervention itself. If you say you've provided food for everybody, you've provided custard for us to drink, and it turns out that only 7 out of 93 people have spoons, you know that no matter the effort you make with your hand, you're going to go hungry that day. So let's find out how many people have spoons for this 1 trillion that the CBN is bringing out as an intervention fund. That's where a proper assessment will have to begin from.
Well, in the face of this coronavirus crisis, we have seen many leaders across the world addressing their people, taking charge. Boris Johnson is out there every day with the chief medical officer addressing the people and other officials as well. President Donald Trump of the United States is ahead, in terms of addressing the people. From initial skepticism, he has taken charge. And many Nigerians are saying, yes, the Nigerian government may be taking certain steps, but where is President Muhammadu Buhari? At what point is he going to address Nigerians, to reassure us, to personally take charge of this crisis that is causing anxiety across Nigeria? Do you think we need President Buhari to step up and take charge, or we should just be satisfied with officials who seem to be very busy trying to upstage each other in terms of who is more concerned about our welfare?
Well, he's been our president for 5 years. What is his profile in those 5 years? He has not come out. He has not stepped out of anything. There are killings. He doesn't step out. There's a Boko Haram. He doesn't step out. There's a headers and farmers. He doesn't step out. At the most, he will say he has ordered them to fish out the people. So let us leave the respectable gentleman alone and try to solve our problems. What will happen if President Buhari steps out? To make an announcement, to say that the money has been brought out and so the Ministry of Health and all health-related agencies should get on with the job, I think we don't need to distract ourselves. When you have a leader, you must understand his reflexes and know what to do and how it will work. So we should make demands of the institutions of state that have services to offer, because it has not been my experience. I don't know whether your team has had a different experience here in the last 5 years, Ruben, but what I know or what I've seen is a president that is not in the habit of stepping out for such things. I think there was an event the other day and somebody was saying, we should watch the president's body language. And I asked him, do you watch the body language of somebody you do not see? I'm not descended from a long line of soothsayers to start predicting invisible things. So let's leave the president alone. Those who are criticizing him for that, they've already opened an industry. Let them keep up the good work. But our concern is for Nigerians to not go under because of this coronavirus, for us to keep pressure on the organizations and agencies that are supposed to attend to public health, to compare what they're doing with what is going on all over the world, and to insist on the right indices of progress and not display. So I'm not concerned about the president's visibility or lack of it. What I will even want to see perhaps is the first lady, the president's wife, as a mother who might, if she comes out, Nigerians will actually find it reassuring. She has a pleasant personality, and her rare comments on national issues put her in very good light. And this will probably be a good time for all the women activists, all those talking about rights, to also get in, because it will have a reassuring effect. Probably make some of the men who are running up and down and doing nothing to feel a little ashamed of themselves and take their job more seriously. But I'm not of the view that the president's visibility or lack of it will make any difference, because his public appearances, in my view, I may be wrong, they are rarely reassuring. The speeches are rarely inspiring in my assessment. And what would happen if I were him? What you do when you know your profile, you get people, competent people who will be buffers around you. What needs to happen will happen whether you're there or not. But to insist on him jumping around and making it an issue, you must ask yourself whether an entity can change what it is just because you tell it to do so. We already know who he is. It's not a pattern. That is not to justify it, but that we shouldn't expect energy demanding rain from the sun. That's not how it works.
Exactly. I quite agree, Dr. Ikechukwu, amusingly as you put it. But the president has been in public life, all my life, quite frankly. We understand his character. You cannot expect anybody to change the habits of a lifetime. But it must be said that there's several stages of grief Some people are in denial. You have clearly accepted. But to move on to my next question, you raised a really important point about the most vulnerable among us in society, the informal sector, small and medium enterprises, and what have you. You have a situation in the United States, which the British government is also considering, of handing cash to people or mailing checks. We saw that in the last election with conditional cash transfers. Do you think that that will reoccur now? Do you think it's going to come to that? And what are the chances of that happening for the most vulnerable among us, who literally need to trade every single day to make a living? If they don't come out and work, then what happens in this era of self-isolation?
Well, I think that conditional cash transfer work in economies that have meaningful indices for measuring both access, impact, and final outcome. We did the one that Osibanjo has been doing or did during the first term. First, where is the money? Second, where are the people impacted? Third, how did their lives change? And finally, and most importantly, what percentage of that money actually got into the hands of the poor, as distinct from the elite and their friends who were charged with distributing it? So what we're likely to have if we insist on a new round of conditional cash transfer will be evidence in government record of money transferred, but no indication of impact on citizen welfare. So that, in my view, it will just be good. Oh, have you forgotten we gave out money? You see, there's something fundamentally scandalous in handling the state, management of the state, as if you're invited to a picnic or you have a set of beggars lined up and it's at your discretion what you give any of them. Make the country work. If you're tiring roads in my area, for instance, there's going to be a lot of laborers. Those laborers are not going to be imported from the moon. They will be local boys and men. They will eat during the day. Most of them will eat in the morning and the afternoon before going. Hilton, like a Transcorp Hilton or Federal Palace will not go there. It will be the local women who will cook. Farmers will not need to import anything from Kogi State. It will be people that will now pick up vegetables from their backyard to prepare such things. And so you find that a local economy begins to flourish. So when people argue about the nexus or direct connection between capital expenditure and the building of infrastructure or inflation of the economy, it is not what economists discuss on TV and when they attend meetings, when they tell you about inflation rate being stable at 1 digit, the Naira is stable at this thing for 6 months. It's not whether it's stable, but whether it can be accessed and used to produce anything. If you say the economy is stable, you give all those lovely global indices. My simple question to you is, your cousin in the village, has his life improved in the last 7 years? Your answer is no. Has it worsened? Your answer is yes. But you just told me the economy is doing well and Nigerians are happy. Unless, of course, the criteria for happiness is that you show you can receive 12 strokes of the cane without crying, then that's okay. You're happy. So both our paradigms for measuring performance and the interventions we are making, they need to be substantially revalued. So to get back to your substantive question about cash transfer is going to be money collected and spent. If you look at it, it will run into billions. It will not translate into anything after that day. The person will need to eat again. If you want to transfer, begin also with values. Have you had anybody since this corona thing talking about the entitlements of members of the National Assembly or the volume of cars state governments are still buying? Is that not where to begin to look? You have people you elected to represent you. They meet occasionally, if I must use the expression, and then go on recess for 6 weeks. And every month, each of them carries a couple of millions running into tens of millions, apart from whatever else must come from the side. So you see that a fundamental sense of irresponsibility becomes a strong component of public service. And instead of trying to deliver service, we're increasing the number of agencies that provide service. Right now, there are over 500, all of them with overhead. If you create a new one, what will happen if I'm the DG? Won't you get me an official car, then a pilot vehicle, then a security detail, and you begin to set up my... By the time you're done, we haven't started work, but we have a monthly overhead of 180 million that must come out every month. You look at all of that, these agencies, capacity to coordinate disappears. We have a diaspora commission. Wonderful idea is working, but nobody pays attention to the fact that you've also effectively demobilize the Nigerian Diplomatic Service, the Foreign Affairs Service. So, as president, how many people will report to you? Are you a magician? Are you hydra-headed? So this whole predicament of the world and Nigeria today just might be an external force that will compel some serious thinking in leadership, in governance, and in public service.
Well,
you're in a nation where there's no order.
Thank you very much, Dr. Okey Ikechukwu.
Always a pleasure.
We truly hope that it will compel rigorous thinking and more practical, responsive action going forward. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.